If you want to wait and do this another time when more people are
No, that's
here,
fine.
I could
No,
come
no, that's
back.
fine. Uh, Now the way I work is I set a date and I do it. So regardless of whoever shows up or when they show up, I will still do this. Anywho, I may do another one, but it's good practice anyway. Like it doesn't sit right with me to not do it. It wouldn't make any sense because I set out to do it. So I'll probably cut it to like an hour though. And I can just like it could be more of like a mini lesson. So instead of I was gonna go through like a whole bunch more stuff because I figured there'd be more people. But if it's just you, I can go over the basics and then like for like half an hour, take some questions, and then we can just wrap it up. So basically, so you're familiar with my story. Um,
No, I'm not.
you're not okay. Well, I had insomnia for 19 years, really, really badly. Like, just kept on getting worse and worse as my life progressed to the point where I was sleeping like an hour or two a night and not sleeping 3, 4 nights a week. Some weeks I wouldn't even sleep, and there were periods of up to a month, two actually, only two, but two periods of up to a month where I didn't sleep at all, just
Oh,
none. It was just this perpetual awake insomnia, bizarre, surreal hellscape. But basically, so that is something genetically I get from my mother's side of the family. Her mother has it, my mother has it, but not quite as badly. So this is going to come into the genetic predisposition where I will cover genetic predisposition and how that plays into insomnia. So I'm going to specify first two different types of insomnia because both these are normally called insomnia, but they really are not the same at all. So this will be mild insomnia. This is extreme insomnia. And I'm going to cover the basics of what characterizes both of these types of insomnia because they're not at all similar. Really. I mean, they look superficially similar. Not even really. Basically, mild insomnia would be, I would define this as shortened sleep, shortened sleep, delayed, um, occasional inability to not sleep, poor sleep quality occasionally. And this can be fairly persistent. I'll say usually less than 6 months. This type of insomnia is usually less than 6 months. So if you've had insomnia for less than 6 months, you may have mild insomnia,
I've
which
had it most of my life. I'm 62 years old.
okay, so you've had it most of your life. So now we're gonna so this is the other type of insomnia we're talking about. So this is um lifelong or at least years. At least years. I'd say fairly constant. There might be an odd week or so once in a blue moon where you can sleep decently, but it is fairly constant. There's really no. It's not like it's a chronic condition. It is not something that you just have one time randomly or for like 1 week. You're like, oh, I couldn't sleep that well because there was something stressful going on at work, or I had a stressful sporting event, or something like that. That would not be this kind of insomnia. But again, that probably wouldn't persist for lifelong or years unless you routinely put yourself in stressful situations. Still, though, doesn't really like if it's been lifelong or for many, many years and it is almost always constant, probably in this category because most people, let's say they're over consuming caffeine or doing something of that nature, If they stop doing that, then their insomnia goes away, which is why that is this category. So even though you can, let's say, you could have poor sleep quality for a year because you're over consuming caffeine. But if when you stop consuming caffeine, it goes away, then you would have type 1, let's say, mild insomnia. And really, though, you don't see that very often. You don't see it often where people will have insomnia or poor sleep patterns for 6 months to a year at a time for something very, very mild. Or what will happen is if they are in that state, you can progress from mild insomnia to extreme insomnia if the underlying causes here are not addressed. And those can be ranging from inflammation, electrolyte, mineral imbalances, just a whole bunch of like shorter term things. And then the longer term effects of those, if they're not addressed, can turn into this type of insomnia. So lifelong, years, constant, say medication resistant as well. Or let's do RX, doesn't work. RX.
I've been on Ambien for a long time. Before that, I took another, I think it was called Restoril for a very long time.
Yeah.
I also
Do they work well?
Sort of. I also take cannabis.
Sort of. When you say sort of, do you mean you took them for a time and then they sort of work occasionally if you take them on occasion? But if you were to try to rely on these things, they don't really work at all.
They don't, nothing really works. Like nothing, I don't have a full deep sleep. I just, I don't know.
So, yeah, you probably fall into, so medication doesn't work. Cannabis it can make it slightly better, but in my experience, it doesn't solve it by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
And then the other interesting thing about this type of insomnia is often associated with other health issues. So that is the other defining characteristic of this extreme insomnia that I'll be talking about in great detail.
I think I have I suffer from childhood PTSD from my childhood.
And you think that that's a main cause of insomnia?
I think so. I think my childhood was pretty traumatic. So everything always happened at night. When my dad would go crazy at night. So that was my trigger to like be aware, to be be awake, because my dad might do something,
Okay. And so can you sleep during the day?
No.
Okay.
I don't fall asleep. I'll try to take a nap and then I'll sleep for like a minute.
And when you take a nap or try to sleep in some capacity, do you feel fear or some sort of anxiety preventing you from sleeping, or is it simply
Yeah.
and so you feel fear and anxiety?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get sleepy, or do you get tired but not sleepy?
Yeah, I get sleepy. My eyeballs get really tired but I don't fall asleep.
I guess I'm saying the distinction between sleepy and tired, this can often be characteristic of a few types of insomnia where you'll be very, very tired, but it's like a wired tired. It's like the part of your brain that should get sleepy doesn't get sleepy.
That's me. Yeah.
Okay. So that, in my opinion, I'm not an expert on PTSD and all the many ways that PTSD can affect different things. That's not my area. But from what you've told me of that sensation, I've only ever seen that sensation with people who have this more extreme type of insomnia. And I'd also say that I don't like drugs should probably work then. Like if it was anxiety based, then benzodiazepines, which are chemically
Well,
removing anxiety from your brain in
it-
some sense, those would work consistently. So it doesn't make sense that it would be PTSD, just in my personal opinion. I don't know,
so
but
is Ambien a benzo?
Ambien is not a benzo. Ambien's a hypnotic in a sense, but
So,
Ambien should also work if it was PTSD. Ambien, Xanax, those things should be very effective if it were PTSD based. So if you found that those, some people have also found cannabis to be very effective for PTSD. Cannabis is, however, ineffective for uh, this more extreme type that I'm talking about. And so, what is your sleep pattern like? Because that would.
I try to go to I I try to get in. I go to bed early because it takes me so long to shut down. I go to bed like at 9, but I'm not asleep. I don't fall asleep till like 10, 11 o'clock. And that's with help. That's with taking a pill, taking an edible, smoking some
Mm-hmm,
cannabis. I had to do a lot.
mm-hmm.
And so,
And you get to sleep, and then how long would you stay asleep for?
maybe 4 hours, maybe 5, if I'm lucky, you know.
If you're unlucky, how long?
Unlucky, it's like I wake up constantly. I'll just wake up and I'll go back to sleep and wake up and go back to sleep and maybe a couple of hours.
Hmm. Okay, so.
You know, I wear this watch that tracks my sleep, and I hardly get any deep sleep, like maybe
Hmm,
10 minutes. So it tracks all of that. So I don't know how accurate it is, but
I feel you. And it's decently accurate. So I just, that to me suggests the first, like this type of insomnia. Because if it were simply PTSD based, I just don't think you would be seeing the. I mean, unless you have like other, do you have other constant symptoms of PTSD?
I have a lot of anxiety, but it's always when I'm in bed and going to sleep. That's when my
Okay.
anxiety starts.
Hmm.
So like my whole body gets really tense and everything also for my anxiety. Like
That definitely is.
I'll be tensing up like my legs and my arms, all my whole body will just be trying, when I can't fall asleep.
Hmm. So that, the tensing up, that could also just be due to not ever sleeping. Because I remember back when I had insomnia, I would get tremendous anxiety when I was going to bed because I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep and it was like torture. So that became an associated thing. And then people would tell me that because I had this anxiety, that it was the anxiety preventing me from sleeping and that was it. And I always kind of knew that was BS because I felt like I wasn't getting sleepier. Like I was like wired, tired. Like it was felt like there was something off in my brain that was like not working properly. Like there was something that should be happening in my brain in order for sleep to initiate, and that thing was just out of commission.
So
And
I did this spit test where you have to spit into this thing every like 4 hours or something like that for 24 hours. And when they analyzed my spit, they said that my adrenals are going on at night instead of in the morning. That was what they told me. But that was a long time ago, and that it was, I don't know if that was true. You know what I mean? I don't know about that.
that makes sense actually. I'm continuing down the categories. Adrenal issues is another common symptom of this type of insomnia. Hormone slash thyroid problems. Hormone slash thyroid problems. Hair falling out. Gut
What?
issues.
I don't have any gut, but I have my mind won't shut down. I just can't stop thinking and worrying about everything.
Okay, so there are a few different. So I think you definitely have this more severe type of insomnia over this, obviously, because you've had it for your entire life. So now I'm just going to go through the lifelong causes of insomnia, like potential causes that could be contributing to insomnia, such as you've described, because those are varied. There are a few different, and they usually work together in some sense, and that causes some complexities. And they kind of lead to each other, so I'm going to kind of make a flow chart.
Okay.
So you could start anywhere on here and then end up a variety of other places. Yeah, it's really quite something. So let's start here. Let's go autoimmune. Autoimmune right here. Thyroid / hormones. Copper toxicity right here. Toxicity. Vitamin or mineral insufficiency. Vitamin insufficiency. Let's be comprehensive. Toxic environment. Thyroid. Metabolic issues. Let's see here. Metabolic issues. Leaky gut. Adrenal fatigue. So autoimmune thyroid, metabolic issues. Adrenal fatigue. Okay, let me see if we're missing anything. So thyroid and hormones, autoimmune, leaky gut, metabolic issues, copper toxicity, vitamin mineral insufficiency, toxic environment, adrenal fatigue. Leaving off dehydration because that would be more of a short-term cause, but dehydration makes all this worse. So does like if you're on medications that are causing problems. Medications can also make these things worse. Are you on any medications? Because you're on medications, I can include that in the.
No, the only one is the Ambien.
Okay. So right here, I'm going to mark off which ones are usually primary. Actually, they can all kind of be primary. So you could have thyroid hormonal issues are I'm gonna add nutrient. I'm gonna add another dimension of nutrition. Let's call it nutrient malabsorption. And that has to do with the gut as well.
What do you do? What do you do, Devin?
What do I do?
Yeah.
This
Are
is
you
what I do.
are you a chiropractor or a
I'm not a chiropractor. I am a technically independent researcher, but I have a tremendous amount of skill in the area of connecting all of these things together. So I essentially do consulting work for people in areas similar to this. So I have a few clients who are business owners trying to improve their health so they can improve their businesses. I have a few clients who have insomnia and want to resolve their insomnia, and I'm working with them to do that. That's what I do.
Oh, okay.
So I've been doing this, involved in this field for like 2-3 years, and then I've been researching and working at a less serious level for the last 10 years in this field. So I just have a lot of experience with people coming to me who have various issues that are related to diet and ways various things that I'm going to get into all go out of balance. So I become somewhat of an expert. I've become an expert, but humbly, I have become an expert in interconnecting all of these things. And I became this expert because I had insomnia, and there was no body of knowledge out there that could put everything together to help me fix the insomnia. So I had to develop this system. And by developing this system, I was able to keep my insomnia gone forever and also help various other people with everything ranging from like chronic fatigue to brain fog to postural movement problems to negative reactions to food and diet, metabolic insufficiency, various things. I mean, they're all basically related. So essentially, there's a few others as well, but you're going to basically, if you're having insomnia, such as what you have, it's going to be related to one of these topics in some way, and that's going to relate to a few others. That's why it becomes so hard to get rid of. But once you can identify what is actually going on that's causing the insomnia, then you can just fix those specific areas and the insomnia resolves itself. And the reason that it's these areas is also because these are the long term. For short term, be other things, but for the long term, it's one of these essentially, because if it wasn't, it would have resolved itself at some point in time, or something else would have happened. For like this, just having seen many cases of this extreme type of insomnia and experienced it myself, I can say very confidently that anytime, maybe there's going to be someone I'm going to run into who's had part of their brain removed and they're going to have insomnia that's unrelated to this, but every case of insomnia I've ever seen is related to these topics. And then, like I said, medication issues and a few other issues that are, I'm going to throw in inflammation here, because inflammation is always a culprit, but it's more secondary. Inflammation. Okay, so I'm just going to start by introducing you to all of these, and then we can see how they connect, because there's a lot here and they connect in a lot of nuanced ways. So in order to best understand, I think that's the way we should proceed. So thyroid and hormones, if you have some sort of thyroid insufficiency, T3, T1, thyroid hormones, testosterone, estrogen imbalances, these sorts of things, these can cause insomnia. Usually secondary causes, though, I've usually seen that develop once someone's had one of these other causes for a much longer period of time. And another autoimmune. This is very, very, very common. People who have insomnia, this is some sort of reaction to something in your diet. Often seed oils, often there's like problem foods that many, many people react to, depending on how reactive you are. Depends on like how much of what's in your diet you're reacting to. But in almost every case I've seen where someone has this sort of insomnia, there's an autoimmune component. Because there usually has to be if you weren't reacting this, and it's usually to seed oils or something derived from seed oils. Because if it wasn't, then you'd be able to get it out of your diet. But those things are pretty much omnipresent. That was what it was for me. It's seed oils and literally anything cause debilitating insomnia. I can't, if I have
So
fish
you
oil
know,
pills with glycerin in them derived from soy, then I can't sleep for 3 days. It's bizarre, but it's repeatedly observable in many different people that there are these compounds, and you can debate as to why. I mean, maybe it's just genetic reaction to these compounds. Maybe it's the fact that these compounds are very GMO'd. Maybe it's something to do with the refining process. Whatever it is, there's a consistent pattern of reaction to those compounds specifically, but it could be anything. But most of the time, nearly every time, what I've seen is it's seed oils and seed oil derived compounds because
so like
these are
so sesame seed oil.
sesame seed oil, probably. I mean, that also is going to relate to inflammation as well, which is also not going to be doing you any favors. So inflammation, so yeah, like that, like sesame seed oil, canola oil, soybean oil, vegetable oil, grapeseed oil, cottonseed oil, corn oil, sunflower oil. I may have missed one, but you get the idea. So, and then
What about flaxseed also?
flaxseed, probably not, but maybe. I haven't seen flaxseed specifically, but again, consumption of flaxseed oil isn't highly common. But flaxseed oil is higher in omega-6s, so that's going to have an inflammatory effect, which will also exacerbate autoimmune. And then could also contribute to leaky gut, metabolic issues, vitamin and mineral insufficiency, leading to copper toxicity, adrenal fatigue, thyroid hormone condition, metabolic issues. So you see how they all connect. So it's like, let's say you were eating lots of seed oils, let's say, and let's say you had
I don't
autoimmune.
really. I use sesame every now and then. I don't use.
What about
I use
vegetable
mostly
oil?
olive oil. Huh?
Mostly olive oil,
Yeah.
pure olive oil.
Yes.
Okay, good. So that's good. So that means you might be lower on the inflammation. But if you're buying bread from stores, getting anything pre-prepared for the most part, most supplements, like a pretty much like pretty much if you're unless you
Anything
just happen to
processed?
what?
Anything processed? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I've seen seltzers that have it. It's really bad. Like even natural flavors are often literally these seed oil derived compounds because they add them to things because they make the things nothing eats it. It's like if you see those videos where people take a McDonald's hamburger and they put it on a plate and they let it sit for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Right.
Nothing
Yeah.
eats it. And it's these seed oil derived compounds. They're toxic. And they add them to pretty much everything because they're preservatives, they're cheap, they're industrial waste products, so you get them really, really cheap. And so unless it's really hard to avoid these things. Like if depending on how your level of sensitivity, for me, I never eat out at restaurants. I make all my own food. I make all my own broth. I buy like cheese, butter. I get like raw milk from farms, eggs I'll get from the store, fruit, potatoes, vegetables. Nothing canned really at all. Like just very, very minimal stuff from the store.
Yeah.
And yeah, I will probably get into that later and just listing out compounds and like listing out where these things are because it's like 90% of things, especially in the inner aisles. It's crazy. Like all breads, all anything and anything processed, like anything as processed or more processed than bread is 1,000,000% has these things in them. Some spices even. Yeah, it's really bad. Like pickles. See, I see it added to pickles. Like I said, most supplements, and that is a primary cause. And for what I've seen, that's a primary cause of this type of insomnia. And the reason that this, I would say, is so prevalent is because the presence of these compounds and everything. If you're the one thing you can't get away from, like even if you're trying as hard as you can to not take these things, you'll still end up accidentally taking them unless you're just very, 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 very experienced and have a background in organic chemistry to some degree.
Well, I try to buy all organic food,
It's still,
and I try not to eat any processed food, but I do.
yeah,
So
it's that
I, I
is,
I think my diet's pretty good, as far as like I don't eat at McDonald's or anything like that, but every now and then you eat something that's not 100%. So
and it could
um,
even be in supplements. Do you take supplements?
oh, not really.
What do you eat? Like everything you consume, let's say, just give me a rundown. I'll like tell you how much that would apply to you or where it would be.
Uh, I do eat rice. I'm half Chinese, so it's hard to get away from rice.
Right.
Um,
And
I
so you
buy
make the rice
organic.
yourself?
I have organic rice. I buy that. Yeah, I cook my own rice. Sometimes I eat frozen rice. So uh, we eat a lot of mostly vegetables, salmon, every now and then some chicken, not too hardly any beef or pork or anything like that. But sometimes I do. I do get some dumplings, like processed frozen dumplings.
How
That'll have
often would you say you do?
how often?
Yeah.
Well, not my whole life, okay? It's just I don't know. I'm just saying those are the bad things that I would eat. Um,
Mhm.
I make a lot of salads, soups.
What do you use for dressing?
Um, I started, well, I need I I used some soy sauce, but I have tamari at home. I can use that instead of that.
Sorry, probably. These things, I want to move on because there's a lot of other things, but a lot of those things I would potentially just reflect back on the course of your life. Like, have there ever been any points in your life of 3 months or greater where you religiously consumed nothing processed at all and made everything you consumed?
No, 3 whole months? No.
Yeah. Okay. And then just from my own experience, unless you are deliberately out of your mind and trying to avoid all causes of all these pseudo-derived compounds, you're not avoiding them all. So we're going to assume that you're regularly consuming those, but I mean, just because you are, if you're not deliberately, like, if you're not reading every single thing and like combing it through for analog words representing soybean oil, all these different seed oils, or anything derived from them, then it's definitely getting consumed. So you have
What
that
about what about
causes.
what about coconut oil?
Coconut oil is good.
Okay.
So you have autoimmune. This causes, let's put only one thing I don't have on here, insomnia, because insomnia does contribute to insomnia. So this will, so this causes insomnia, and then this is where things go bad. The insomnia then causes metabolic issues, inflammation, hormonal issues, can contribute to leaky gut. The hormonal issues can contribute to copper toxicity, also contribute to adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue contributes to leaky gut, inflammation, hormone insufficiency. all of these things increase your overall body's level of stress, which all then feed back into enhanced autoimmune responses to food. Metabolic issues leading to nutrient malabsorption leading to copper toxicity, vitamin mineral imbalance. Vitamin mineral imbalance also contributes to copper toxicity, also contributes to adrenal fatigue, also contributes to leaky gut. Autoimmune also contributes to leaky gut, depending on what you're eating. If you're eating gluten, that's very, very, very common cause of leaky gut in people. Leaky gut, again, I don't know if I said that leads to nutrient issues, metabolic issues, copper
What's your
toxicity also leads to
what's your viewpoint on CMOS?
CMOS.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's not going to solve your problems, but it's
meant as far as being okay to eat.
Probably. It depends though. I mean, it could the only thing I'd say about that is if you're copper toxic, then CMOS would not be a good thing to consume because CMOS is probably very high in copper. So depending on
how do you know if you're copper toxic?
Well, you can get an HTMA test.
Okay.
So you get an HTMA test, or if you have a lot of the associated symptoms of copper toxicity, generally an HTMA test though is the only definitive way to know if you're copper toxic. But if you're experiencing all the symptoms of copper toxicity, you have all the risk factors, and eliminating sources of copper and supplementing, assuming you had copper toxicity. There are ways to assume someone has copper toxicity without directly testing, but I would recommend an HTMA test in every case. But you can kind of if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and flies away when you run after it with a broom like a duck, then it's probably a duck. Or at least related to a duck. So
would I have a green patina? Is that how I would know?
A green patina? No, you would get, it's an HTMA test would basically test, it's a hair tissue mineral analysis test.
Oh,
and that does a few things. That would test for copper toxicity. One thing to keep in mind though is that if you're copper deficient, if an HTMA test shows up that you're copper deficient, that could also be a symptom of or an indication of copper toxicity. Because when your body is very copper toxic, it sequesters copper in tissues and out of the bloodstream. So you'd actually have you get copper deficiency by copper toxicity. It's just this weird idiosyncratic function of mineral imbalance. But so an HTMA test that either shows too much copper or far too little copper, both of those are indications of copper toxicity. But an HTMA test will also show you have other vitamin and mineral imbalances such as magnesium deficiency, zinc deficiency, a few other ones. I mean, it's not a perfect test, but it's still a good idea because you could have copper toxicity show up, vitamin mineral insufficiency, and then some environmental toxins as well. So this can also be like mold toxicity, et cetera, et cetera. This can cause and contribute to all of these other things as well. Mold toxicity, environmental toxicity can look in a lot of ways like all these other things and cause all these other things. So be kind of redundant to go over that, but that is another factor because let's say you're in a toxic environment that can contribute to vitamin mineral insufficiency, metabolic issues contributing to, and then just all throughout the whole thing. Because like you say, all of these can cause all these other ones. So if you're
what about from my childhood? I grew up next to the freeway, literally next to the freeway. With that, I'm sure I have asthma. I'm sure that
asthma's another indicator of copper toxicity. It could be. I mean, these things are hard to. I couldn't tell you with any certainty right now what's going on because that whole process is its own 2-hour interview. We can set up a call if you're interested, and I could just interview you for 2 hours and we could go through and see if we can identify any patterns. because I could then tell you how that relates to all this, but I want to keep going through this. So, like you see, the autoimmune, you're not sleeping. Not sleeping causes inflammation to rise, leaky gut, nutrient malabsorption, metabolic issues, thyroid issues. All of these increase your body's overall stress level, which also contributes to all these. I'll break these down like a bit more. So you have leaky gut primarily or most commonly caused by gluten, but it can be caused by any number of things that someone is specifically intolerant to. Leaky gut is essentially it can also be caused by metabolic issues, but leaky gut is basically gut permeability. Your gut becomes permeable either due to food stuff backing up in there, food not being digested properly, consumption of gluten or things that destabilize and hurt the gut lining and can break through the gut lining. Those cause leaky gut. Leaky gut contributes to inflammation. It can also aggravate autoimmune symptoms. It'll cause poor nutrient malabsorption, which will lead to metabolic issues if it's not already caused by metabolic issues. And then that leads to vitamin mineral insufficiency, which can over time lead to copper toxicity, adrenal fatigue, et cetera, all causing insomnia. I mean, not that all these things cause insomnia in everyone, but one way to think about it is that everyone has a weakest link, and you break down at your weakest link depending on the type of stressor. For me, consumption of autoimmune causing seed oils caused me to break down immediate insomnia. Other people, it causes chronic fatigue. A whole number of different things, but other people, it causes diarrhea, whole bunch of different stuff. But basically, you break down at your weakest link. So that could be insomnia first, and then you start breaking down in other areas as well. And that's the way to think about this, is that like you're here because you have insomnia. So I know you have this. These are all the known causes of insomnia and how they interplay. So we know if you have this, you have at least one of these other ones. I would say most likely combination of this, probably metabolic issues as well. If you've had insomnia for as long as you have, that usually leads to metabolic issues. Leaky gut may be a factor. I don't necessarily know, but potentially this, probably this too. But that alone, that alone, and then the potential other factors, that'll be enough to keep you not sleeping for a while. I mean, you're sleeping like 4 to 5 hours a night. You can actually get 4 to 5 hours a night. So
but that's with help. That's not natural
yeah,
sleep.
but that's still though. Like, no, I mean, but like I work with a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people. So the scope for me, like one of my most recent clients is someone, I won't divulge any details, but my client was sleeping an hour a night when I started working with that person.
Yeah,
And
I
that
was
had been
like
going
that
on for 2
before.
years. So, and that was resistant to medications and various other things, and pretty much everything else. So that was for instance a autoimmune, nutrient malabsorption, copper toxicity, vitamin mineral insufficiency, adrenal issues, metabolic issues, thyroid issues, and yeah. So
So
that
how
person
much
had a lot
how
of
much do you charge, Devin?
um
Let's
that
get down to
depends. We can
brass
talk about that. We can book a call and talk about that.
tacks.
Um
I, I, I just, you're working with me one-on-one right now. I really appreciate that. And,
you're welcome. I mean,
um,
I for my sake, I want to be the best in the world at helping people identify the causes of these like chronic conditions in their diet and lifestyle. And like that's my long-term goal. My long-term goal is just to be the best in the world at this. So from my perspective, every every opportunity I have to help someone or get face-to-face, person-to-person experience helping someone resolve these issues helps my understanding and furthers me forward. So even though it's like just you on the call, like I'm having a great time. I think this is awesome. I'm very, very glad I decided to do this because
so
it
when
makes
you,
me better every
yeah,
time it makes me
sorry,
better every time.
when you contacted me on Reddit, I didn't know who you were or anything, but I thought, what do I have to lose? So
That's kind of the people I've been reaching out to. Because that's the people who I relate to the most. Like I was like one of those people who literally like I was on Reddit just like post all these sites just posting like how do I sleep? I can't sleep, like what's gonna happen? Like am I gonna die? All this stuff. And everything I got wasn't very helpful. So it was very I went to like literally like in college, like the month I didn't sleep, I was at UMass. I was at this world-class sleep, and they had a world-class sleep institute there. So I show up there and they're like, I think it's stress related. Have you tried breathing techniques? And I'm just like, you guys are supposed to be a world class institution. I haven't slept in a month. And you're telling me to focus on my breathing? Like, it was just like the end of the, they were like, well, we could, it was just like exasperating because it was like everyone who should have known what to do didn't. And I couldn't find, I mean, maybe there's some people out there who like,
I have Kaiser, and I've been to every single sleep anything they have to offer. You know,
so none of it does anything. It's because they don't. In my personal opinion, nothing to make
well,
any
they
plans.
want me on drugs. That's
Yeah,
what
that's all
they
they do.
want.
That's all it
They
turns
want
into.
me to they want me to go to a therapist and get drugs for depression. And I'm like,
Yeah, they're
is that
probably going to put
really
you on Seroquel because
is that
Seroquel.
the answer though? Is that the
No, it's not the answer. It's not. It probably won't do anything anyway. I mean, like a lot of the people I work with or have talked to, like they've been on these drugs. They've been on like a whole slew. They've been on like Seroquel, Ambien, benzos, barbiturates, like oh, just a whole SSRIs, just a whole freaking slew of medications, and none of them do anything. It's like it was the same thing in my experience. I took like every single herb, drug, supplement, melatonin,
yeah,
combination of everything known to man to cause sleep, and it would basically turn me into like a kind of a zombie for an hour, and then I would just be still awake.
right.
It was very exasperating. So yeah, and I think the reason for that is ultimately that it's these things I'm talking about. Like if you're not addressing nutrient malabsorption, metabolic issues, vitamin mineral insufficiency, copper toxicity, adrenal fatigue, environmental toxins if they're present, leaky gut, inflammation, thyroid hormones, because inflammation also makes all these worse too. Autoimmune. If you're not addressing these things, they're still going to be there, and the drugs are just going to be a crappy cover up. So it's not going to ultimately like there's going to be no resolution because it's like you're
Right.
going to take the drug's going to have somewhat of an effect, and then you're going to build tolerance to the drug after a few days to a week, and then the drug no longer does the little thing it did do because you never. It's like I don't know. It's like it doesn't matter how good your bullets are if your gun's jammed. You got to like get the thing out of it that's jamming your gun. That's just the only way, and that's like this sort of stuff, or like if there's a fundamental piece missing, nutrient, or like if you're using the wrong bullet, metabolic, whatever. Like if you're not putting the right things together, then it's not going to work. And these things like Seroquel, these drugs are useful for mild insomnia. The first type I was talking about, where it's like occasional and it's not caused by any of these deep issues. Because if you're just having stress, yeah, sure. If I give you Ambien, you're gonna fall asleep. If I give you weed, you're gonna fall asleep. If I give you enough turkey, you'll fall asleep. You know what I mean? Like if you're stressed out, it doesn't take that much to knock you out. It's fairly easy. You could
I,
even like some people in that category, I would say they have vitamin mineral insufficiency. Like common is magnesium insufficient, like insufficient magnesium, insufficient zinc, insufficient all these different trace minerals and vitamins, B vitamins,
so,
omega-3 fatty acids.
so do you get those all through your food?
I get them through a combination of food and supplements I take. Like I personally take B complex, vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium. I also add salt to my diet because it helps with vitamin mineral balance and adrenal issues and thyroid hormones and metabolism. So I supplement salt as well. You do tyrosine, like a few things. I supplement a few things, but most of it I get from I'll take like cod liver oil, raw egg yolks. I'm a big fan of raw egg yolks, raw liver, that sort of stuff. But I will
You
supplement.
eat raw liver?
I do. You don't need to. It's not necessary to get rid of insomnia. It makes me feel awesome, so I do. And it's a great source of vitamin K2, vitamin A,
So do you
zinc,
get,
B
are you,
vitamins.
is that from a grass-fed cow and all that? And
Yes, yeah, I get for the liver, I do grass-fed cows. For most of my beef, I don't. Not too particular. I favor grass-fed, but I will eat non-grass-fed. That in and of itself, I've never seen to cause issues on its own. But one of the common combinations that I've seen that I want to cover, because this is very, very common, is besides leaky gut, let's say, causing inflammation, autoimmune, and let's say autoimmune primary, there's also copper toxicity and vitamin mineral insufficiency. And these are related. So if you have, and if your diet is insufficient or insufficiently balanced in vitamins and minerals, like let's say zinc copper, for instance, zinc and copper are inversely related. Same with copper and a few other vitamins, minerals. Magnesium and calcium are also related. B vitamins, vitamin D, all these like vitamin A. So like vitamin D metabolism is related to vitamin A, K2, magnesium, calcium, and omega-3 fatty acids and hydration. So if you have insufficient vitamin D or insufficient in any of those chronically, then that will lead to issues related to other functions in the body, because vitamin D controls the function of something like 200,000 genes or whatever. It's like insane. So that will cause issues, but that also, like, let's say you're insufficient in zinc chronically, which not saying you are, but like, let's just, for instance, you eat very little red meat and also large amounts of, let's just say, I'm just going to exaggerate your diet because it makes a better example. And I don't also want to go through your diet in great detail at this point because that'd be too laborious. But let's say you eat lots of chicken, fish, lots of vegetables, some fruit, and that basically constitutes your diet. And let's even add like occasional almond milk, oat milk, these sorts of things. Let's say it's like, let's say you bend towards vegetarianism. And then let's just say someone were to take birth control or be taking supplemental estrogen, let's say, because that would be a key. That'd be a beautiful setup for copper toxicity. But let's say like low zinc dominant foods, high copper dominant foods such as vegetables, etc., and exogenous estrogen or even exogenous testosterone if it's sourced from plants in the form of bioidentical hormones. That specifically is very bad, and that thyroid hormones will also contribute to copper toxicity because the hormonal change will cause copper to build up to toxic levels, which is the main function of copper toxicity, which will then also further affect the hormones, generally shutting down the hormonal system, and that can cause.
So I had a hysterectomy in my 40s. I have one ovary.
Okay. That is a
Hormonally,
symptom. That is
I'm
a
covered.
symptom of copper toxicity. Ovarian issues are, and like hormone issues related to ovarian issues are symptoms of copper toxicity. Also, if you have frequent fungal infections, do you have frequent fungal infections,
No,
May? Chance?
no, not that I know of. I haven't,
Constipation.
no,
Um,
unless I eat improperly, then yeah. If I eat too much meat or bread or anything like that, yeah. But I try not to eat that stuff. So
I don't really know. I'd have to send you a series of questionnaires I have, and then probably send
because
for
I
an
think
EPA, but
hormonally, I'm really like um, low estrogen, I am low hormonally.
yeah,
So,
that
and
is.
I started taking some, but it was really uh bothersome, so I
Yeah,
stopped taking.
you will get symptoms from that. A lot of those are sourced from soy. They source bioidentical hormones from soy because of course they do. It's a very dark problem. Like it really, with one thing I want you to take away from this is a huge reason for insomnia is this, 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 and this, which are largely one step away from the sheer quantity of toxic bullshit that is in nearly everything that is passed
I
on
know.
these days.
Well,
So
I
it's
know everything's
very
toxic.
what?
Everything. The air, the water, our food, our furniture, our cars,
Yeah,
everything.
it's really bad. Yeah, it's really, really bad. So nutrient malabsorption connects to vitamin mineral insufficiency. If you're not absorbing nutrients properly, then you're going to have vitamin mineral imbalances. Also, that will relate to leaky gut, again, inflammation. All of these as well relate to metabolic issues. If you're not eating the proper types of food for your metabolism and properly feeding your body as its metabolic needs change, then like if you have a slow metabolism, for instance, you have a slow metabolism, not a lot of energy. You have insufficient thyroid hormones, that is almost always related to metabolic issues as well. So those are almost inseparable. You don't usually ever see metabolic issues without thyroid issues and thyroid issues without metabolic issues. Because hormones are the main driving force in metabolism. Hormone production is also affected by vitamin and minerals, which again, these two, vitamin mineral copper toxicity can cause vitamin mineral malabsorption or insufficiency. And then all these things can contribute to adrenal fatigue. And adrenal fatigue is essentially a state where your adrenal glands no longer have the necessary energy, nutrient reserves, etc., to properly function. And that's partially due to elevated cortisol over time, but also not sleeping. So that's how that's related to. So autoimmune causes insomnia, which will contribute to adrenal fatigue. Copper toxicity will also contribute to adrenal fatigue. Vitamin mineral insufficiency, if you have insufficient vitamin minerals or insufficient nutrients in general, your adrenals will be unable to replenish themselves and you'll get adrenal fatigue. But really, just insomnia alone would be enough to cause a great degree of adrenal stress. So that's kind of how these all relate. And then generally speaking, I'll just go through just before I field some questions and then wrap up. I'm just going to go through the, let's say, 5 steps to getting rid of insomnia permanently, just so we can end on a good note, because this is all very doom and gloom in some sense. Because it's like, oh shit, if I end up getting any of these or I'm affected by any of these, it'll lead to all of these over time, which it probably has affected all those systems in you because you've had it for so long. So I'd be surprised if there wasn't some degree of trickle down downstream. But if you can sleep like 4 to 5 hours, even with the aid of drugs, like be grateful for that. That's actually fairly rare for people who have lifelong extreme insomnia. Like,
Well, I've had 2 weeks of no sleep also. I've done that also.
okay,
It's just because I started using drugs, it's kind of helping. But it's never 100. I never feel, I mean, let me just say, I'm not going to say never, but it's very rarely that I feel like I slept enough that I feel like I slept, refreshed.
yep.
And if I get in like an 8 hour thing, it's very choppy. It's never full, solid. It's 4, then 1, then 1, then 2. Something like
Yeah,
that.
I relate to that. Um, so how to get rid of insomnia? So do 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 do. Let's start with 5 reasons to see if it's 5 steps to see if I can come up with more. So first step is, this is, I make all my clients do this. This is absolutely necessary. Change markers. This marker is not sufficient. Tracking. So the first step is track. track everything you're consuming, absolutely everything. Track the sources of everything you're consuming, track the amount of water you're consuming, track how much you're sleeping, track how much meat you're consuming, where it's sourced from, every single possible thing that is going into your body. Track all of it. Track what you're doing throughout the day, track the amount of outdoor time you're getting, track your physical activity levels, track your stress levels, track your intake of sodium, track your supplement intake, track your medications, track when you took them, track when you ate those things, everything. Track absolutely everything. That is first thing to do. If you do that properly and experiment properly over time, this one thing can enable you to make progress and even over time fully resolve insomnia. If you did nothing else, you just tracked everything and looked for patterns. Very, 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 very powerful. Because that is ultimately, like in every case of insomnia, you have a different combination of those previous factors we just discussed. And the only way we're going to notice exactly what's affecting your insomnia, what's causing your insomnia, and how to get rid of it permanently and keep it gotten rid of and get rid of all the factors, resolve all issues related to that is tracking. It's just tracking religiously, because that way you can really notice patterns. You'll notice tons of things you would never notice if you weren't tracking. All my clients, before they start tracking, they're like, I don't need to track. I know exactly what I'm doing. The second they've tracked for like 2 weeks, they're like, holy cow, this has changed my life. Across the board, whether they have insomnia or they're businessmen, whatever it is, they're all grateful that I make them track. The
So
next thing.
let me just ask you, I take this turmeric and I take collagen in my I drink chai in the morning, and I'm wondering, does that collagen have a bunch of stuff in there, or is that
It could. It probably has nonsense compounds in it. Like literally, unless you're. This is one of the reasons to track, because you can get rid of those things.
Yeah.
And then see if your sleep improves, and then add them back in, and then say, okay, what? And then look at all the ingredients, and say what ingredients keep on showing up when my sleep quality is bad, and what ingredients, when they're gone, improve my sleep quality, or what things, when I include them, improve my sleep quality, and how. So tracking, very, very, very important. The next thing I would say to do is an elimination diet. Some sort of elimination diet. There's a lot of ways to do an elimination diet. Those are going to depend on your metabolism, your personal needs, but everyone who has insomnia should do an elimination diet. It is absolutely mandatory. If you have insomnia, you have chronic fatigue, you have any sorts of chronic issues that could in any way be related to diet, everyone should do an elimination diet. And what you want to do for an elimination diet is reduce your food consumption down to a very, very small quantity of essential foods that are high in nutrients, easily digestible, that agree with you personally. You can do a little experimentation, but some sort of elimination diet where you massively reduce the ingredient numbers too. Like you want to be consuming like 10 ingredients tops, pretty much. Like 10 individual ingredients tops. So if you added the
10
ingredients on all
10
the
a day
labels,
in one day, or what do you
period,
mean?
for like
Yeah.
a period of like 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long it takes.
So eat 10 ingredients for 4 weeks.
Yeah, 10 ingredients for 4 weeks, and like just massively, like we'd be saying like, so like example would be like olive oil, potatoes, maybe like a vegetable, just the raw vegetable you prepare it yourself, beef, chicken, eggs, yogurt, apples, butter. Like that would be it. And like that would be like, I think that would be it. Like, and like nothing else. There'd be no subcomponents or sub ingredients to any of that stuff. It would just be just that.
No salt, no
You do
pepper.
like, I mean, salt's fine. Salt's definitely fine. Spices, I
use a
would
lot of
start
garlic.
without the spices. Start without the spices and then add them in.
Okay.
Salt's fine though. Salt's an essential mineral. You need salt. Yeah, you need salt. Salt's very important. So elimination diet, very, 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 very important. And like even if you're taking like a medication, every single ingredient that goes into the pill of that medication counts as an ingredient and should be eliminated as much as possible for the duration of the elimination diet. You have to be rigorous. You have to be rigorous like a chemist. I don't know if you've ever been formally trained in chemistry, but if you ever have, that's the kind of rigor you need for the elimination diet. So the elimination diet, and then next, I would say elimination diet. HTMA test.
Can I just order that myself, or does someone have to order that?
You can order it yourself. They're about $135. I could send you one that I found that I think is pretty cool, but HTMA test. Everyone, like, you have insomnia, like chronic insomnia, take an HTMA test because like you don't know what's going to show up on this. And that could be very, very, very helpful. I had a client who I didn't start her off on an HTMA test, and I should have. And it just took longer to resolve the insomnia than it should have because I didn't have her take an HTMA test. Because I was like, oh, we can get away with not taking an HTMA test now. HTMA test. Yeah, if you're not sleeping, it's worth $135 just to like cross off more possible variables of what could be causing this insomnia.
Yeah, I want to do that. I want to take that test.
So you just take like a little bit of your hair, clip it off, and just send it in.
So you don't have to get the root? You don't have to get the...
No,
pull it
you just get near the scalp. It's like very non-invasive.
Okay.
It's a very non-invasive, inexpensive test that's fairly accurate, very accurate. So I think it's a very good investment. And there's companies that'll send you back a full report as well. So track elimination diet, HTMA test, proper supplementation. Proper supplementation. And this is a whole topic on its own. Supplementation. Proper supplementation. That's a whole topic on its own. You want to properly supplement magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, fish oil, cod liver oil. The hard thing with supplementation, though, is you have to make sure the supplementation does not violate the elimination diet. Very tricky. So proper supplementation that can also be informed by the HTMA test, and then I've had to give one more step. And supplementation is going to vary on individual needs, but look into proper supplementation, like magnesium, zinc, like all the common vitamins and minerals associated with sleep quality. Look at all those fatty acids, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think the last step, there's a lot of different things, like a lot of things you could run into along the way while you're doing this. Find what works for you. I'll put that as the last one. Find your solution. And that's going to have to do with finding the foods that work for you, finding the foods that don't work for you, finding the combinations of foods that work for you, exercising, like really committing to like finding out what works best for you long term, and just lifelong refining of all the different variables that go into how you feel, think, move, sleep, don't sleep, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to understand, like, the only valid question, not the only valid question, but someone once told me this is the only valid question, and I kind of agree with that. It's really profound. The only valid question is, how's that working out for you?
Right.
I really believe that. Like, that's the only valid question, because it's like everything in life is subjective. We are all subjective people, and like we do experience objective reality, but how much can we ever say of objective reality with like the limited tools of language and all these things? You could have two people disagreeing who actually agree deep down, but they lack the language to understand how they agree, so therefore they must argue. It's best to not get involved in over intellectualizing things, and to develop simple understandings based on your own experience. So if people are like, oh, blah, 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 stress, all this stuff, and da, 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 but you know that when you do the elimination diet and supplement properly, that you're sleeping, it doesn't, the theory is the theory, the result is the result. If the theory is giving you the result you want, then it's a good theory. But the second the theory stops giving you the result you want, it's no longer a good theory. No matter how good of a theory it is, how long it's been a good theory, if the theory is no longer working, get rid of the theory and seek something else. Because that's all that matters. Like, how is it working out for you? Like, even like HTMA tests, all these things like blood tests, all these different tests you can take, whether they show something or don't show something, at the end of the day, what you want is a resolution to the symptoms you're experiencing. And if the symptoms resolve and all
Right.
the markers of health go up and you're feeling better and you're moving better and all this stuff, but someone's like, oh, hey, those eggs are high in cholesterol. You should really use these low cholesterol seed oils to cook with. Cholesterol is a big issue. Let's say you get your cholesterol checked and your cholesterol's fine, you feel good, like you're not at risk of things. Or even let's say, here's a common thing. Like, I remember back a few years ago, I was doing a ketogenic diet and I was absolutely shredded, super athletic. I was working out all the time, competing in jujitsu and wrestling at peak athletic condition. So I go into the doctor's office and they're doing blood work and stuff. And like, they basically, like, my inflammation was 0. Everything was like absolutely perfect. My cholesterol was perfectly normal. I mean, I was eating tons of meat. I was eating like 3 pounds of meat a day and like pounds of bacon and eggs and stuff. Good sources, but a lot of meat and cholesterol. And they said my cholesterol was on the higher end of normal. Like, my good cholesterol was through the roof, and my LDLs, the bad cholesterol, was like within the normal healthy range, but just slightly to the high end. And they were like, my inflammation was 0. Everything else in my tests were all perfect. And like, the doctor at the end, he was like, oh, your BMI is a little high. And it looks like your cholesterol is a little high. So you should probably lower your cholesterol consumption. And I was sleeping great. Like, everything was great. So I just took my shirt off at that point. I was just completely shredded, total 6-pack. And just like, I was like, are you sure I need to lose weight? Because he's like, your BMI is high. You need to lose weight. It's probably like, he was just intellectualizing this thing, and like, I was great and like everything was great, but according to these numbers that he had on a screen, things needed to change for whatever reason. And it was just very, you want to avoid that. The guy was also really, really overweight too, which I thought was kind of comical, and I switched doctors after that because I just don't, it's like funny, like an overweight doctor telling me that like I need to lose weight and I'm like completely shredded. The reason that my BMI is high is because I can deadlift 500 pounds. So I have a ton of muscle mass. So it's like, if they're just looking at like the ratio of body weight to height in inches, and they're like, oh, you're overweight. And they're looking at like cholesterol, like, oh, this is slightly high. It's like, if you look at the rest of the thing, no inflammation, everything's fucking perfect. So, and you end up having like all these, and this is like, I'm like my dad, for instance, he has gout right now in his foot. And one of the things I'm telling him, because like a lot of the doctors are telling him like, oh, it's this and this and this and this and this. Funny enough, the doctor's actually, one of the medications he was on, he did his own research on it, and the medication that they put him on for, he has a heart condition, that actually causes gout. They switched him to that recently, right when the gout came in.
Oh.
And they were like, he goes in because he has gout, and like they have all these like theories and whatever, and none of it was accurate. And it's just like, always stay very, very grounded in what's working. Like, I remember, this is why it's so personal and near and dear to me. I remember back my junior year of high school, I was trying a low sodium diet because that's what the American Heart Association, all these governmental organizations recommend. They say consuming too much salt can cause all these different issues, blah, blah, blah. I was trying to resolve my insomnia. I thought this could maybe help. The literature all said that it should help. Long story short, I ended up shitting blood because my digestion get completely fucked. I ended up having adrenal issues, like a ton of issues as a result of like low sodium. So I was wrestling at the time, sweating a ton.
Wow.
And you need salt. Like, you need salt on a cellular level for your cells to function.
Yeah.
Really important. And all this literature, even this literature recommended to athletes, was all saying low sodium, low sodium, low sodium. And I just said, to hell with it. And I just started taking salt pills. And I literally, to this day, I still take salt pills. I literally take gram capsules and I fill them up with salt and I just pop like 6 of them a day. It keeps my like, vitamins and mineral balance good. And
Do
I
you
feel great.
also do you put salt on your food?
I also do salt in my food. I mean, that's related to ultimately metabolic types as well. Different metabolic types based on genetics have different needs for salt. Some people need very little salt, other people need a lot of salt. I fall into the category of people who need a lot of salt. So well, you do want to be aware of theories so you don't fall off a cliff. Like you don't want to just be like, oh, like I'm going to only consume sugar because I feel good when I eat only sugar. It's like, and if you just carry that out, but at some point you're going to stop feeling good. And then you should listen to that. So always listen to your body, listen to what's working, listen to what's not working. And a theory is only as good as it works. If a theory doesn't work, then it's not a good theory. And that's it's just very important in this day and age. A lot of people get very wrapped up in food propaganda, diet propaganda. And at the end of the day, the only final arbiter of what is or is not real for your diet and your health is how it affects your health. If your health is getting better, your sleep's getting better, your hormones are great, your metabolism's great, you have tons of energy, you have clear skin, and like everything's good, then everything's good. If you're not sleeping, you're feeling like crap, you have like indigestion, all these things, then even if the tests say that it's good, it's not good. And it's just something to keep in mind because that gets lost a lot. Even like the vegan craze, for instance, I fell for the vegan craze when I was trying to fix my own insomnia. And I remember like I got like 3-4 months into it. And I was just feeling worse and worse and worse. And I just kept reading these vegan forums. They were like, that's just the detox. Just keep going, keep going. It's like, no, no, like I've been doing this for 3 or 4 months and I keep feeling worse. Like I felt a little better in the beginning and now I'm feeling terrible. So no matter what your theories are, it's not working for me. I need to find another solution. And being willing to let go of that dogma, because if you read a lot of this in the vegan dogma too, and a lot of the dogma out there, you think red meat's literally poison, and it's not. Red meat is very nutritious, and there's essentially no health conditions associated with the consumption of red meat. All the studies that show that are epistemological, which means that they sent out surveys to tens of thousands of people and said, oh, what did you eat for the past 5 years? And then they analyzed their results and compared that to their relative rates of cancer and heart disease. And they noticed a like 4% increase. And for starters, one of the reasons that's nonsense is there's a million ways to hack a study to get nonsensical results.
Right,
But
right.
even beyond that, these are the legitimate studies that the American Heart Association and all these great organizations are using to base their claims that we should eat less meat. It's literally, it's like 4% increase in random cancers. It's like a 4% increase in a very small number is still a very small number. And a 4% increase when you're surveying tens of thousands of people for memory, not even observing what they're eating, but for memory, just saying, what did you eat? And then compare the relative rates of diseases.
So
It's a,
you
without
don't
even
think
controlling for other variables, it's very, it's deceptive. It's very deceptive. And I think it's a shame. I really think it's a shame. It really upsets me.
well,
There's
I
a
don't know.
lot of
I
suspicion that
was
goes on.
always understanding that the cows that are eating GMO corn is also contributing to gut issues if you're eating that beef.
Um, I've never met anyone that sensitive or heard of anyone that sensitive. I don't. For me, the furthest I take it is I don't consume the fat of like let's say someone for recently offered me conventional chicken fat and I turned them down because conventional chicken fat you get the high linoleic acid content from the foods they're eating. Beef, you do get a slightly different omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio, but it's really not as bad. Like actual comparisons between grass-fed beef and conventionally raised beef show minimal nutrient distinction differences, and like, even like you hear about like hormones and beef and stuff. there's hormones in animals to begin with. So you're getting, your body processes these without really any negative effects. So when we look at, it's a whole other topic. I don't want to get too into it because,
It's okay.
but
It's okay.
essentially, no, like a lot of like people claiming that conventionally raised beef will give you gut issues is nonsense. Conventionally raised beef will not give you gut issues. At least I've never seen it. I've never seen it, and that's saying something, and I've never even heard of it. I do know that grass-fed, grass-finished beef can be better for some people who are nutrient deficient. And like for instance, I consume grass-fed liver. It gives me a lot of vitamins and stuff that I'm not getting from normal conventionally raised beef. Because conventionally raised beef is like absent the higher quantities of certain trace vitamins and minerals. Other people, let's say you're copper toxic. If you're copper toxic, you benefit from those trace minerals and vitamins, like the very small amounts, because those help you metabolize the copper better in certain instances. So there's instances where it's better, but I have never seen it cause these issues on its own. Or even in combination with things. I've never seen that. I mean, it's like, even the studies too, I can't think of those specific studies off the top of my head, but if you see those studies, the way those studies work is they basically take some facet of conventionally raised beef and say like, okay, like this is a higher omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio, still a favorable one, but still a higher one. We know that high concentration of omega-6 fatty acids causes inflammation in the gut. Therefore, conventionally raised beef is bad for you. But here's the other thing is that they recommend instead of consuming beef that you consume these seed oil type compounds, soy, etc., corn oil, and those are through the freaking roof. And these omega-6 compounds and inflammatory. So it's like, it doesn't even like you have to like look at what they're saying on the other end too anytime you're reading these studies, because like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh, because cows are fed corn and soy and all these things, they're unhealthy, therefore you should eat corn and soy. No, like that doesn't make any sense. And that kind of logic just pervades the dietary, nutritional, medical community. It's very unfortunate. I think that that's ultimately why we're seeing all this insomnia that people can't cure. Like, I mean, I have high success rates for curing insomnia. I've got, yeah, I think like one of my clients just signed up, so he hasn't started seeing results yet. But all my clients I've worked with for insomnia, once they've worked with me for a few months and they're actively engaged, they've seen resolution and improvement in all their sleep symptoms. And it's just, and like I'm waiting on, like one of my clients waiting on like full improvement because she went from like an hour a night to like 5 hours a night, 6 hours a night, and then like
That's pretty good.
yeah, it is, but it's she has a lot of issues as well as a lot of compounding problems. So it slows down the process because like absorbing vitamins and minerals is needed to detox the copper, which is needed for the hormonal effects for all these things, but the digestion's affected, so we have to get the digestion going again strong and all these things. And it's been very complicated. And that was also the person who I should have had the HTMA test. But still though, no matter how hard a client I've ever had to work with, I've had resolution in all the clients. And that's really, 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 really interesting for me, because that's like,
you have clients that are really hard to follow what you want them to do, like
no, I don't work with people who
tracking.
no, I
Tracking
don't. Now part of working with me is that you have to be easy to work with. If you're not easy to work with, then like
I'm just thinking about how easy will it be for me to track all my food? Will I, that's
you can learn. I mean, you get used to it like anything else. It's like it's not easy to like do your taxes when you start doing your taxes, but like over time it just becomes second nature. So if you just maintain discipline about it, you can do that. But yeah, so this is the end of the seminar presentation of the webinar. So if you have any questions, I'll field those for a few minutes.
No, I'm good. Thank you. I
Okay.
think I asked you everything I,
Sounds good. And if you want, we can set up a call and I can actually take you through my process and we can so the way it basically works is I take you through an interview process for 2 hours and I just figure out every sub detail and everything going on that I think it could be contributing to your insomnia over the course of your lifetime. It's very in depth. And what that does is that, first of all, it's just necessary because without doing that, you could have like I do this with all people before I work with them because like you could have there could just be like any number of different things going on in your life or like in your healthcare. Like what if I found out that like you got shot in the head back in like 1995 and like the bullets like lodged behind your optic nerve or something like you know like there's
Right.
weird things you find. I'm not even joking, like there's just weird things you find out when you're like working with people and like I have the interview process so that if I'm working with someone things like that don't come up. I'm not like a week into working with someone and they're like, oh, this is probably flaring up because of that time I got injected with like
Oh, okay.
500 cc's of like random experimental drug or something. And I'd be like, what the heck? Like, why didn't you tell me that? And they're like, I didn't think to. Why would that be relevant? And I'm like, I've had stuff like that happen. So I actually have the interview process so I can like make sure that what I think is going on is actually what's going on and also identify what I think is going on. And decide like whether or not I even want to work with the person. At the end of the interview process, I'll tell you everything I know. And it'd be a lot more of this. We'd actually go into every single subcomponent of all of this and like break it down how it specifically applies to you over the entire span of your life and that's contributed to your symptoms. And so that's very informative for you. And then yeah, at the end, if you want to proceed, we can formulate a plan, proceed. I'll send you a series of questionnaires that are meant to assess various aspects of your metabolism. Just do like what your body's doing, which will give me a good outline for where we should start in terms of dietary intervention. And then I would be there to guide you through the entire process, take you through the elimination diet, work with you to make sure that this is the diet that's going to work best with you while you're doing this. Go through the tracker, teach you how to track in detail, teach you how to track relevant things. I'd be going over your tracker daily, seeing if I can notice any patterns causing insomnia, seeing how resolution of the symptoms is going, seeing how that's correlating to the interventions we made. I can help you interpret the HTMA test too. It does come with interpretation, but I can tell you how that applies to the rest of it. Give you supplemental recommendations as well, and then also work with you. So basically, the benefit of working with me is that I do take you through all of this, but the call is also free if you're interested. Because
okay, I want to do that.
okay,
I'll
so
do that with you.
what time works best for you tomorrow? Could we do, let's say, 6? Let's do 6 p.m. EST, just an hour before the webinar today started. Does that work?
6 p.m. Tomorrow is
What's your time
Thursday.
zone?
I'm in Pacific, San Diego.
Okay, so you're like 3 hours behind. So that'd probably be like 3 p.m. your time, like, if I'm correct.
Yeah, 3 p.m.
Okay, if that works, we could do that. If
I need to look at my calendar. I can't. I'm on the phone. I'm on my phone. So if I put it on, if I switch screens, will I hang up on you?
I don't think so.
Okay, hang on a second. Tomorrow's Thursday, right?
Yes.
And so what'd you say? 3 p.m.?
Yeah, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or no, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
3 p.m. my time.
Yeah, 3 p.m. your time. I'm just gonna write that down.
So would I call you?
No, just I'll I can send you a link. I'll just send you a link via
Okay.
Reddit.
Okay.
Sounds good. 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, San Diego. Awesome. So, my name is Devin, by the way. I don't believe I got your name.
Yeah, I know your name. It says Devin. My name's Leanne.
Leanne. Okay.
Yeah.
Leanne. Pleasure to meet you, Leanne.
Nice to
I'll
meet
see
you.
you tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.